I straightened my pencil skirt for the 5th time in as many minutes, the cheap polyester fabric clinging to my thighs in the oppressive heat of the waiting room. The air conditioning hummed overhead, but anxiety made my palms slick with sweat that had nothing to do with temperature. 27 years old, and this was my last shot. 3 months of unemployment had drained my savings to nothing. The eviction notice waited on my kitchen counter like a ticking time bomb, giving me 2 weeks to come up with rent I didn't have. The receptionist, a woman with porcelain skin and a designer suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, hadn't looked up from her computer screen since I'd arrived 15 minutes early. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, diamond rings catching the fluorescent light with each keystroke. Everything about this place screamed money. Real money. The kind that didn't worry about rent or groceries, or whether the power would get shut off. The leather chair beneath me was butter soft, the kind you sank into rather than sat on. Abstract art hung on the walls, pieces I recognized from a museum exhibition I'd visited, back when I could afford such luxuries. Before the accident, before everything changed, I caught my reflection in the polished chrome of a nearby lamp and barely recognized the woman staring back. Professional blazer from a thrift store, carefully pressed. Hair pulled into a severe bun that hid the fact I couldn't afford a decent cut. Makeup applied with a light hand to cover the shadows under my eyes from too many sleepless nights spent calculating impossible budgets. The scar itched beneath my blouse, the way it always did when I was nervous. I resisted the urge to reach back and touch it, that raised ridge of damaged skin that ran from my left shoulder blade down to the small of my back. 5 years since the fire, and it still felt foreign, like someone had grafted another person's skin onto mine. The doctors had done their best with the skin grafts, but charity hospital plastic surgery only went so far. At least it was hidden. No one had to see the ugly reminder of the night that had stolen everything from me. "Miss Chen?" A voice cut through my spiral of anxiety, and I looked up to find the receptionist finally acknowledging my existence. She gestured toward the massive oak doors behind her desk with one perfectly manicured hand. "Mr. Salvatore will see you now." My heart kicked against my ribs as I stood, smoothing my skirt one final time. The job posting had been vague. Executive assistant needed. Excellent pay. Discretion required. I'd applied to hundreds of positions over the past 3 months, growing increasingly desperate as each rejection email arrived. This was the only one that had called me back. I couldn't afford to wonder too much about what discretion required meant. I just needed the job. The door swung open on silent hinges, revealing an office that belonged in a magazine spread. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across hardwood floors that gleamed like dark honey. The desk was a massive thing, all sharp edges and modern design, positioned to put whoever sat behind it in a position of absolute power. But it was empty. "Come in. Close the door behind you." The voice came from my right, and I turned to find him standing by the windows, backlit by the sun so that for a moment he was nothing but a silhouette. Tall, broad-shouldered, hands clasped behind his back, in a posture that radiated authority. As my eyes adjusted, details emerged. Dark hair, slightly too long, curling at his collar. A suit that whispered of Italian tailoring and obscene price tags. And a face that made my breath catch in my throat. He was beautiful in a way that seemed almost cruel. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could have been carved from marble, lips that were full and expressive in a face otherwise composed of hard angles. But it was his eyes that held me frozen in the doorway. Dark, almost black, with an intensity that felt like a physical touch as his gaze swept over me. Not leering, not the way men usually looked at women, but as if he was cataloging every detail, filing away information for later use. You're early. He stepped away from the window, moving with a predator's grace that sent warning signals firing through my nervous system. Miss Olivia Harper, correct? Yes, sir. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Thank you for seeing me. His eyes lingered on my face for a long moment, something flickering across his features, too quickly for me to identify. Then he gestured to one of the leather chairs positioned in front of his desk. Sit. It wasn't a request. I crossed the office on legs that felt uncertain, hyper-aware of his gaze tracking my movement. The scar on my back seemed to burn, though I knew that was impossible. Phantom pain, the doctors had called it. Psychological more than physical. I lowered myself into the chair, keeping my spine straight, my hands folded in my lap. Professional, composed. Nothing like the terrified, desperate woman hiding beneath the surface. He didn't sit. Instead, he circled behind me, his footsteps soft against the hardwood. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to keep him in my line of sight, but I forced myself to remain still. This was a test, I realized. He was testing me. Your resume is impressive. His voice came from somewhere behind my left shoulder, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and subtle, cedar and spice. 3 years as an executive assistant at Morrison & Associates. Excellent references. And yet, you've been unemployed for 3 months. Why? The firm downsized. My throat felt tight. They let go of junior staff first. And yet, your references describe you as indispensable. He moved around to my right, still not sitting, still circling like a shark. Why would they let you go if you were so valuable? I swallowed hard. I don't know, sir. You'd have to ask them. Oh, I did. The words fell like stones into still water. They told me you left voluntarily after some kind of personal crisis, that you were dealing with trauma, that they were sorry to lose you, but understood you needed time. Heat flooded my cheeks. The half-truth I'd constructed on my resume crumbled to dust. I cleared my throat. My apartment building caught fire. I was injured. I needed time to recover and rebuild my life. The firm was understanding, but I couldn't afford to take the leave I needed. So I resigned. He was in front of me now, leaning against his desk, arms crossed over his chest. The afternoon light caught the edge of his jaw, and I noticed a thin scar there, barely visible, a reminder that even beautiful things could be damaged. Show me. I blinked. Excuse me. The injury. Show me. My blood ran cold. That's not relevant to my qualifications. Everything about you is relevant if you're going to work for me, Miss Harper. His voice remained calm, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath. I need to know if you're physically capable of the demands of this position. Long hours, stressful situations. I need to know your limitations. My hands clenched in my lap. The scar is on my back. It's extensive, but it doesn't affect my ability to do my job. Then show me. The room felt too small suddenly, the air too thin. This was wrong, inappropriate. I should stand up, walk out, file a complaint with whatever agency handled such things. But the eviction notice waited at home. The empty refrigerator, the mounting credit card debt, the desperate calls from bill collectors I'd stopped answering. I stood slowly, my fingers moving to the buttons of my blazer. The practical voice in my head screamed at me to stop, that no job was worth this humiliation. But I was drowning, and this man was offering me a lifeline, even if it came wrapped in degradation. The blazer fell away, leaving me in just the thin white blouse I'd ironed so carefully that morning. Turn around. I did, moving like a puppet, my body obeying while my mind recoiled. His footsteps approached from behind, and then I felt his fingers at the collar of my blouse, not touching my skin, but carefully freeing my hair from where it tucked into the fabric. The bun came loose at his touch, my dark hair spilling down my back. Then his hands moved lower, finding the buttons of my blouse. I can do it. The words came out strangled. Stay still. His fingers worked down my spine, each button releasing with a soft pop that seemed deafening in the quiet office. Cool air hit my skin as the fabric parted, exposing the worst of me. The scar tissue that webbed across my left shoulder blade, puckered and discolored, trailing down in an angry path that the surgeons had tried and failed to make beautiful. No one had seen it since the final hospital visit. I'd made sure of that. High-necked shirts, careful positioning, a life lived in fear of exposure. His sharp intake of breath was audible. I closed my eyes, waiting for the rejection, the disgust, the dismissal I'd known was coming. Instead, his fingers traced the scar with a feather-light touch that made me shiver. Following the path of damaged skin from my shoulder to the small of my back. How did you get this? His voice had changed, rougher somehow, heavy with an emotion I couldn't name. I already told you. A fire. His hand pressed flat against my back, spanning the width of the scar. This wasn't caused by a fire, Miss Harper. This is a burn scar, yes, but the pattern. He paused, and I felt him lean closer, his breath warm against my exposed skin. This was caused by something specific, something falling on you, something hot. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The hotel collapsing, the burning beam that had pinned me down, the screams, the smoke, the certainty that I was going to die. I pulled away from his touch, my hand scrambling to close my blouse, fingers clumsy with shock and shame. I need to leave. The words tumbled out in a rush as I grabbed my blazer from the chair. This was a mistake. I'm sorry I wasted your time. Stop. The command in his voice froze me halfway to the door. Please. The please surprised me enough that I turned back. He stood by his desk, his expression unreadable, one hand raised as if to reach for me across the distance between us. I'm sorry. He ran that hand through his dark hair, disrupting its perfect styling. That was inappropriate. I shouldn't have. He trailed off, seeming to struggle with words in a way that seemed foreign to him. Sit down. Please. Let me explain. Against my better judgment, I moved back to the chair, keeping my blazer clutched against my chest like armor. He finally took his own seat behind the desk, putting the massive piece of furniture between us. A barrier or a protection, I couldn't tell which. 5 years ago, I knew someone. His fingers drummed against the desktop, a nervous gesture that seemed at odds with his controlled demeanor. Someone important to me. She had a scar identical to yours. Same location, same pattern. She got it during the Grandview Hotel fire. The Grandview. My voice came out as barely a whisper. I was there. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made me want to look away. What's your real name? I don't understand. I'm Olivia Harper. Number. His jaw clenched. Before. What was your name before you changed it? The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. How did you know? Because the woman I knew died in that fire. His voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands gripped the edge of his desk, hard enough that his knuckles went white. They told me she died. They never found her body. But the building collapsed. The fire was too intense. There was no way anyone trapped on the upper floors could have survived. His eyes bored into mine. Tell me your name. My mouth was dry as sand. Sophia Chen. Before I changed it. Before I rebuilt myself into someone new. He stood so abruptly his chair rolled back and hit the window behind him. The controlled, composed man from moments before disappeared, replaced by someone raw and exposed. His hand came up to cover his mouth, his eyes never leaving my face. You're alive. The words barely made it past his lips. All this time, You're alive. I don't understand. My hands twisted the blazer fabric. Who are you? How did you know Sophia? He let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Marco Salvatore. We worked together. At the hotel, I was head of security. You were the night manager. The name hit me like cold water. Marco. God. Marco. Memories flooded back. Not the bright, clear memories of yesterday, but the hazy, dreamlike recollections of another life. Of late nights in the hotel office. Of a security guard who brought me coffee and made me laugh during the long, lonely hours. Of dark eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Of careful touches and lingering glances and the promise of something that had never had time to bloom before fire consumed everything. But that Marco had been different, younger, less polished. Certainly not this man in his $1,000 suit, standing in a penthouse office overlooking a city he clearly owned in some fundamental way. You were. I struggled to make sense of it. You worked security. You wanted to go to community college. You talked about becoming a cop. Plans change. His expression hardened again, that raw emotion being forcibly locked away. After the fire, after you died, I reevaluated my priorities. I accepted certain family obligations I'd been trying to avoid. My father was involved in various businesses. I took over his operations when he retired. The careful phrasing told me everything his words didn't. The Salvatore family. Even in my new life, my carefully constructed existence of anonymity, I'd heard whispers. The name carried weight in certain circles. Power. Fear. Money that came from sources best not examined too closely. Marco's father had been more than just a businessman. And Marco had followed in his footsteps. You became. I couldn't finish the sentence. I became what I needed to become to survive. To build this. He gestured at the office, but the motion encompassed more than just the room. To find power enough that I'd never feel helpless again. The subtext hung between us. Helpless like he'd been the night of the fire. Unable to save the woman he'd cared about. I watched him struggle with the realization, with 5 years of grief and guilt and anger suddenly having nowhere to go. Why did you change your name? His voice had steadied, but I could hear the strain underneath. Why did you disappear? I pulled my blazer on properly, needing the armor of professional clothing. Because Sophia Chen died in that fire. Everything she had, everything she was, burned to ash. My apartment, my possessions, my identification. By the time I got out of the hospital, there was nothing left. I had no family, no one to claim me. It was easier to start over than to try to rebuild from nothing. You could have reached out. To someone. His voice cracked slightly. To me. I thought you were dead. The admission cost me. The building collapsed. They said everyone on the security team was killed trying to evacuate the upper floors. Your name was on the list of casualties. They misidentified a body. It happens in fires. He moved to the window, his back to me. I was pulled out by firefighters. Smoke inhalation, some burns. But I lived. And I spent every day since knowing that I failed you. That you called for help and I never came. I never called for help. My voice was quiet. I was already trapped by the time I knew what was happening. You couldn't have saved me. But someone did. He turned back to face me. How did you survive? A stranger. I remembered the smoke, the heat, the crushing weight of the beam across my back. A man I never saw clearly. He pulled the beam off me, dragged me toward the fire escape. The stairs were already gone, but there was a window. He threw me out. I landed on the fire department's safety net. They pulled me from the wreckage and rushed me to the hospital. By the time I woke up, 3 days later, they couldn't tell me who saved me. No one came forward. Marco's expression shifted, something dark moving behind his eyes. What did he look like? I shook my head. I barely saw him. The smoke was too thick. I struggled to pull up the fragmented memory. Tall. Strong. That's all I remember. He nodded slowly, filing the information away in some mental catalog I couldn't access. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 5 years of missed time, of grief and guilt, and the impossible reality that we were both alive, both changed, both sitting in this office that might as well have been on another planet from the hotel where we'd first met. So, I finally broke the silence. What happens now? Now? He returned to his desk, sitting down with the careful precision of someone reassembling their armor piece by piece. Now you tell me if you still want the job. I stared at him. After everything, you'd still hire me? Why wouldn't I? His expression was unreadable. You're qualified. You need the work. I need an assistant I can trust. Someone who understands the value of discretion. Who knows how to keep secrets? His eyes met mine. You've been keeping quite a significant secret for 5 years. The weight of his words settled over me. This wasn't just a job offer anymore. It was something else. A chance to reclaim a piece of the life I'd lost. Or maybe a trap I was too desperate to avoid. What would the job entail? Standard executive assistant duties, managing my schedule, screening calls and visitors, accompanying me to business meetings. His fingers steepled in front of him. Discretion is paramount. You would see and hear things that must never leave this office. Can you handle that? What kind of things? The kind that require absolute loyalty. He leaned forward. I won't lie to you, Sophia. Olivia. The correction was automatic. I'm Olivia now. Sophia died in the fire. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Olivia. My business dealings are complex. Some of them exist in gray areas. You would be privy to information that could be dangerous in the wrong hands. If you work for me, you work for me completely. No divided loyalties. No second guessing. Absolute trust. Can you give me that? The smart answer was no. The safe answer was to walk out of this office and never look back. To go back to my cheap apartment and my eviction notice and find some other way to survive that didn't involve tangling myself up with a man who'd clearly become everything I should fear. But I looked at him and saw Marco underneath, the young security guard who'd made me laugh, who'd brought me coffee during long night shifts, who'd looked at me like I was something precious in a world that had always made me feel invisible. Yes, the word came out steady. I can give you that. Something shifted in his expression. Relief or satisfaction, I couldn't tell. Good. You start Monday. Salary is negotiable. He named a figure that made my heart skip. Plus health insurance, expense account, and a company car. You'll need to pass a background check and sign a non-disclosure agreement. My lawyer will have the paperwork ready tomorrow. That's very generous. Too generous for a secretary position, even an executive one. His smile was thin. I take care of what's mine, Olivia. Loyalty buys loyalty. The possessive phrasing should have worried me. Instead, it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. I stood, smoothing my skirt. Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. I won't disappoint you. Marco. When we're alone, you can call me Marco. He stood as well, extending his hand across the desk. Welcome back, Sophia. Olivia. I took his hand, his grip firm and warm. When his thumb brushed across my knuckles, I felt it like an electric current. Thank you for the second chance. I didn't give you a second chance. His eyes held mine. You never needed one. You survived. That's enough. I left his office in a daze, barely registering the receptionist's cold goodbye. The elevator carried me down 40 floors, and with each descending number, reality reasserted itself. I'd just agreed to work for a man who was almost certainly a criminal, a man who'd known me in another life, a man whose dark eyes held secrets and danger in equal measure. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt alive for the first time in 5 years. The weekend passed in a blur of paperwork and preparation. True to his word, Marco had his lawyer send over the employment contract and NDA. I read every word 3 times, looking for the trap, but it was surprisingly straightforward. In exchange for absolute discretion and loyalty, I would be paid more than I'd ever imagined earning. The background check came back clean. After all, Olivia Harper had no criminal record. Sophia Chen's past was buried deep enough that no standard search would uncover it. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made the city look new. I'd used part of my signing bonus to buy proper work clothes. Nothing extravagant, but professional pieces that fit well and made me feel less like I was playing dress-up. The company car turned out to be a sleek sedan with a driver named James, who greeted me with quiet professionalism and asked no questions as he navigated morning traffic to the Salvatore building. The receptionist from my interview looked up as I entered. "Oh, you." She seemed surprised and faintly disappointed. "Mr. Salvatore is expecting you. Top floor. You'll be in the office adjacent to his." The elevator ride up felt different this time. Not supplicant visiting power, but someone with a right to be here. The doors opened onto a floor I hadn't seen before. Where the public areas of the building were all modern glass and steel, this level was something else. Dark wood paneling, artwork that belonged in museums, a hush that spoke of serious money and serious power. Marco's office doors stood open, and through them I could see him at his desk, head bent over some document, a phone pressed to his ear. Yes. His voice carried the kind of cold authority that made me pause in the doorway. I don't care about his excuses. The shipment was due yesterday. Every day it's late costs me money. His shipment. If he can't deliver on time, I'll find someone who can. He looked up, saw me standing there, and his expression shifted fractionally. Something in his eyes warming. I have to go. Handle it. He hung up without waiting for a response. "Good morning." I stepped into the office. "Where should I start?" He stood, moving around the desk. "You look different." I glanced down at my new charcoal pantsuit. Better clothes. Your salary made it possible. Not the clothes, though those are an improvement. He circled me slowly, that predatory movement from our first meeting. "You're standing differently. Head up, shoulders back, confident. I have a job. Security tends to breed confidence." His hand came to rest on my lower back, just above where the scar began. "Does it still hurt?" "Sometimes. Mostly phantom pain." I forced myself not to tense under his touch. The doctors say it's psychological more than physical. They said the same thing about mine. His hand dropped away, and he pulled aside his collar enough to reveal a burn scar on his shoulder. From the fire. It aches when it's going to rain. Or when I'm stressed. My therapist says I've associated the pain with danger. My body's way of warning me. "You have a therapist?" His smile was wry. "Rich men's problems require rich men's solutions." Besides, talking through 5 years of survivor's guilt seemed preferable to other coping mechanisms. He moved back to his desk. "Come. I'll show you your office and go through the schedule." The office adjacent to his was smaller, but still impressive. A glass wall let me see into his space while maintaining the illusion of separation. My desk was already set up with a computer, phone system, and neat stacks of files that needed organizing. "Your main job is to manage chaos." Marco leaned against the doorframe. "My schedule is constantly shifting. Meetings get moved. Calls come in at all hours. You'll need to be flexible. Available." He pulled out his phone. "I'm texting you my personal number. If I need you, I'll call directly. Don't ignore it. Even at 3 in the morning? Especially at 3 in the morning. That's usually when the problems happen." His expression was serious. "Can you handle that?" I nodded. The apartment I'd been about to lose seemed very far away. The desperate woman who'd walked into this building last week felt like a stranger. "Yes, I can handle it." "Good." He pushed off from the doorframe. "First test. I have a meeting in an hour with some business associates. I need you to sit in. Take notes. Don't speak unless spoken to. Watch and learn." "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where your discretion will be tested." He held my gaze. "If anything you hear or see today makes you want to run, I'll understand. But you'll have already signed the NDA, so running won't actually save you." The warning was clear. Whatever happened in the next hour would define whether I could truly do this job, whether I was strong enough to exist in Marco's world. I squared my shoulders. "I'm not running. We'll see." The meeting was held in a conference room I hadn't known existed, behind Marco's office, accessed through a hidden door in the paneling. The room had no windows, soundproofed walls, and 6 men already seated around the table when we entered. They looked up as one, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile as they registered my presence. "Who's this?" One of them, a heavy-set man with cold eyes, gestured at me. "This is private business, Marco. This is my new assistant. She's cleared." Marco pulled out a chair at the head of the table. "Olivia, sit here and take notes. Gentlemen, shall we begin?" The meeting that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced in my previous corporate life. Shipments and deliveries that were discussed in careful euphemisms. Money moving through channels that I suspected existed well outside legal banking systems. References to protection and territory that made it clear Marco's business empire wasn't built on legitimate enterprises alone. I took notes with steady hands, forcing my expression to remain neutral even as I documented evidence that could probably land everyone in this room in prison. Marco had been right. This was a test, and I was determined to pass it. "The problem," one of the men said, "is the new district attorney. She's not as understanding as her predecessor. We're seeing increased pressure on our operations. Then we need to make her understand." Marco's voice was calm, but something in his tone made the hair on my neck stand up. "Everyone has pressure points. Find hers. And if she doesn't respond to pressure, then we find someone more amenable and help them win the next election. Politics is just another business. You simply need to know what people want and give it to them." The casual way he discussed manipulating the justice system should have horrified me. Instead, I found myself fascinated by the cold calculation in his approach. This was power at its most fundamental level. Not the corporate maneuvering I'd seen in my old job, but something rawer, more honest in its dishonesty. After the men left, Marco turned to me. "Well?" I closed my notebook. That was illuminating. "Are you horrified?" I met his eyes. Should I be? Most people would be. He moved to a cabinet and poured himself a drink. "Whiskey, neat." He gestured with the bottle, offering me one. I shook my head. Most people prefer their corruption at a distance, dressed up in legal language and corporate euphemisms. And you prefer honesty? I prefer efficiency. He took a sip. "The world runs on power, Olivia. Some people pretend otherwise. I choose not to." "Does that make you want to leave?" "Number." The answer surprised me even as I said it. "It makes me understand why you needed someone who could keep secrets." His smile was slow, almost predatory. "You're going to work out perfectly." The days that followed established a rhythm. I arrived early, left late, managed Marco's schedule with increasing efficiency as I learned the patterns of his world. Legitimate business meetings, mixed with decidedly less legitimate ones. Charity galas where he played the role of respectable businessman, rubbed shoulders with late-night meetings in warehouses that I knew better than to ask about. He was demanding, but never cruel. Expected perfection, but acknowledged when I delivered it. And slowly, carefully, the professional relationship began to blur into something else. Late nights, working on presentations, his hand at the small of my back, guiding me through crowded rooms, the way his eyes tracked me when he thought I wasn't looking. 3 weeks into my employment, I worked later than usual, finishing a report that needed to be ready for a morning meeting. The office building was quiet, most employees long gone. I was so focused on the spreadsheet, I didn't hear Marco enter my office until he was standing right beside my desk. "You should go home." His voice made me jump. "It's nearly midnight. I need to finish this. It can wait until morning." He reached past me and closed my laptop. "Come, have a drink with me." I should. I started to protest, but he was already walking back toward his office. I followed, watching as he poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He handed me one, then gestured toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. "From up here, you can see the entire city." He stood beside me, both of us looking out at the glittering light spreading to the horizon. Sometimes I stand here and think about how far I've come, how much has changed. I took a sip of the whiskey. It burned pleasantly down my throat. Do you miss it? The way things were before? Every day. His reflection in the glass looked tired. The night of the fire, I was planning to ask you out. Properly. Not just coffee in the office. A real date. I didn't know. The admission felt vulnerable. I thought I was imagining the connection between us. You weren't. He turned to face me, and I did the same. I'd been working security to put myself through school, trying to build a legitimate future. Then you died. His jaw tightened. And I realized that legitimate futures are for people who have the luxury of time. I didn't want to waste any more time on might be and could happen. So I chose certainty, power, control. And now? What do you want now? His hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that contrasted with the hard man he'd become. Now, I want the impossible. I want to go back to that night and save you. To not waste 5 years. To have made different choices. You can't change the past. Number. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. But I can change the present. Olivia. Sophia. Whoever you are now. I want. He paused, struggling with words. I want this to be more than just an employment arrangement. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Marco, I work for you. This is complicated. Everything about my life is complicated. He leaned closer. But you're the one simple truth in it. You're alive. You're here. And I've spent 5 years mourning you. I won't waste whatever time we have, pretending I don't still feel what I felt then. What if it's different now? I whispered. We're different people. You're not the security guard I knew. I'm not the night manager. Then we'll discover who we are now. Together. His forehead rested against mine. Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not imagining this. You're not imagining it. The confession felt like stepping off a cliff. I've been trying to maintain professional boundaries, to remember that you're my boss, that this is dangerous for 100 different reasons. But yes, I feel it. He kissed me then, soft at first, tentative, as if afraid I might disappear like smoke. But when I kissed him back, threading my fingers through his hair, the gentleness gave way to 5 years of pent-up longing. His hand spanned my waist, pulling me closer. I tasted whiskey and want, and the ghost of who we'd been before fire consumed that version of ourselves. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire. Stay tonight. Marco. Not like that. He smoothed my hair back from my face. Just stay. Sleep in the guest room. Let me wake up tomorrow and know this is real. That you're really here. The vulnerability in his voice undid me. Okay, I'll stay. He led me to an elevator I hadn't known existed, accessed by a key card that took us to the top floor. The penthouse apartment was stunning, all glass and views and elegant minimalism. He showed me to a guest room that was larger than my entire apartment. Everything you need should be in the bathroom. He lingered in the doorway. Olivia, thank you for coming back, for being alive, for giving me a second chance at this. I crossed the room and took his hand. We both get a second chance. That's the gift of surviving. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. Good night, Sophia. Olivia. But the correction lacked conviction. Standing here with him, in this moment, I felt more like Sophia than I had in 5 years. Good night, Sophia. He said it deliberately this time, claiming the name. The woman I knew. The woman I mourned. The woman I'm rediscovering. Sleep well. After he left, I prepared for bed in a daze. The guest room's bathroom was stocked with expensive toiletries, plush towels, everything needed for comfort. But sleep proved elusive. I lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process how dramatically my life had shifted in just 3 weeks. From desperate and drowning to employed and kissed by a dangerous man who'd once made my heart race with nothing more than a smile. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a text from Marco's personal line. Are you awake? Yes. Can't sleep. His response came immediately. Me neither. Come to my room? Just to talk. I should have said no. Maintained boundaries. Protected myself from falling further into something that could only end badly. Instead, I got up and padded down the hallway, following the sliver of light under his door. He answered my quiet knock immediately, as if he'd been waiting right there. He'd changed into sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking younger and more like the Marco I'd known years ago. Come in. His bedroom was masculine and sparse, a massive bed with dark sheets, more floor-to-ceiling windows, a sitting area with a couch and chairs. He led me to the couch, and we sat facing each other. Tell me about the 5 years. He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Tell me how Sophia became Olivia. So I did. I told him about waking up in the hospital with burns covering my back and no memory of how I'd gotten there. About learning that my apartment building had burned too, in a different fire that same night. An intentional fire, the investigators said, though they never found who set it. About having nothing. No identification. No possessions. No one to call. About a sympathetic social worker who'd helped me get a new identity. Who'd asked no questions about why I wanted to start over. I told him about the months of physical therapy, learning to move with the scar tissue pulling at my skin, about cheap apartments and cheaper jobs, about working as a waitress, a retail clerk, anything that didn't require references from a life that no longer existed, about eventually saving enough for community college classes, about building new credentials, about becoming Olivia Harper, a woman with no past, but a fierce determination to have a future. You were always strong. His fingers traced idle patterns on my knee. I remember that about you. The other hotel staff would complain, would cut corners, but never you. You held yourself and everyone else to impossible standards. I had to. The confession came easier in the darkness. My parents died when I was young. I grew up in foster care. No safety net. No family to fall back on. I learned early that perfection was the price of survival. If I could just be good enough, smart enough, useful enough, then maybe someone would keep me. His hand stilled. I never knew. I didn't advertise it. Who wants to hire the foster kid? Better to present myself as normal, average, someone who blended in rather than stood out. You never blended in. Not to me. He shifted closer. You were the only person in that hotel who saw me, really saw me. Not the security guard. Not the muscle hired to make residents feel safe. You talked to me about books, about art, about dreams bigger than night shifts and low wages. You made me feel less alone. The admission felt too revealing, but I pressed on. Those hours with you were the best part of my days. I used to hope you'd stop by, even just for a few minutes, just to see you smile. I was planning it all out. He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. The perfect date. I'd saved up for months. There was this restaurant you'd mentioned once, Italian place downtown. Too expensive for either of our budgets, but I was going to take you there. Make you feel special the way you deserved. You didn't need an expensive restaurant for that. You already made me feel special. But I wanted to do it right. Give you a night to remember. Then the fire happened. His voice roughened. I stood outside watching the building burn. Knowing you were inside, security tried to hold me back, but I fought my way in. Made it to the 3rd floor before the smoke got to me. Firefighters dragged me out. I tried to go back in. Fought them. Screamed your name. They had to physically restrain me. I turned my hand to grip his tighter. I didn't know. I'm sorry. For what? Surviving? Don't apologize for that. His free hand came up to cup my face. Don't ever apologize for being alive. I'm sorry you grieved me. That you thought I was dead. That we lost 5 years. We're not losing any more time. The determination in his voice was absolute. Whatever this is between us, I'm not running from it. I'm not hiding it. Life's too short and too uncertain to waste on, should I, and maybe later. I'm still your employee. The reality check felt necessary. There are power dynamics, professional ethics. Then quit. His solution was immediate. I'll triple your salary and call it a consulting fee. Or keep working and we'll navigate this together. I don't care which, but I care about you, Olivia. Sophia. Whatever name you choose. I care about the woman in front of me who survived fire and loss and rebuilt herself from ash. That woman is extraordinary, and I won't let her slip away again. His words settled into my chest, warm and heavy. Okay. Okay? He looked uncertain for the first time since I'd met him again. Okay, what? Okay to all of it. To navigating this. To seeing where it goes. To not wasting time on fear. I leaned forward until our foreheads touched. I survived fire, Marco. I can survive falling for you. You don't know what you're agreeing to. His voice dropped. My world isn't safe. The things I do, the people I deal with. You could get hurt. I could get hurt crossing the street. Life doesn't come with guarantees. But this. U.S. This feels worth the risk. He kissed me again, slower this time. A promise and a question wrapped together. We ended up stretched out on his couch, talking until dawn painted the sky pink. About everything and nothing. About who we'd been and who we'd become. About the tragedy that had stolen our first chance and the strange gift that had returned us to each other. As sunlight filled the room, Marco stroked my hair where my head rested on his chest. We should sleep. We have meetings in 4 hours. I don't want to move. This moment felt fragile, like acknowledging the future might shatter it. Then don't. He adjusted us so we were both more comfortable. Sleep here. I'll wake you in time. What about professional boundaries? I teased. We obliterated those around hour 3 of last night's conversation. His arms tightened around me. Just let me hold you, Sophia. Let me prove to myself you're real. I dozed off to the sound of his heartbeat, steady and sure beneath my ear. The weeks that followed were a study in contradiction. By day, we maintained professional facades. I managed his schedule, attended meetings, took notes on business dealings that grew increasingly comfortable with their criminality. But at night, we were just Marco and Sophia. 2 people who'd been given an impossible second chance at something precious. He told me about his family, about a father who'd built an empire through violence and intimidation, about being raised to take over that empire, about rebelling against it by trying to go legitimate, only to have the fire burn away his resistance, about stepping into his father's role and discovering he was good at the darkness. Too good. I told him about my fears, about still waking up sometimes convinced the fire was a dream, and I'd lost everything all over again, about the guilt of surviving when others hadn't, about the strange disconnection of living as someone else, about feeling like an imposter in my own skin. We fit together in ways that defied logic, his darkness and my light, his power and my vulnerability, his certainty and my caution. But somehow, the contradictions complemented rather than clashed. A month into our relationship, Marco had to travel to Miami for business. 3 days of meetings with partners I wasn't invited to observe. He asked me to come anyway. I want you there. We were in his office, the door closed, his hand on my waist. Not for work. For me. Stay at the hotel. Let me take you to dinner. Give me something beautiful to look at between the ugliness I have to deal with. You're sure? Traveling together seems public. Let people talk. His thumb traced circles on my hip. I don't care who knows about us. Unless you want to keep it secret. Number. The realization surprised me. I don't want to hide this. Good. He kissed my temple. Pack light. We leave tomorrow. Miami was humid and bright, a contrast to the gray skies we'd left behind. The hotel was oceanfront luxury, the kind of place where staff anticipated needs before they were voiced. Marco's suite had a view of the beach and a king-sized bed that we both carefully ignored in favor of the separate rooms arrangement. His meetings were held in a penthouse conference room that I suspected was swept for bugs regularly. I spent my days by the pool, reading and trying not to think too hard about what Marco was negotiating behind closed doors. Shipments and territories and protection rackets, I assumed. The machinery of organized crime that kept his empire running. The third night, he returned to the suite, tense and angry. The meeting had clearly not gone well. He poured himself a drink, downed it, poured another. Marco. I approached carefully. What happened? Nothing I want to talk about. His knuckles were white on the glass. Nothing you need to worry about. That's not how this works. I took the glass from his hand and set it down. Talk to me. They're pushing for expansion into territories that aren't ours, areas that have been neutral ground for decades. If we move in, it'll start a war, with families who've been in this business longer than I've been alive. So don't expand. Tell them no. His laugh was bitter. You don't tell these people no, not without consequences, not without showing weakness. What's the alternative? Fight a war you don't want? Or find a compromise that makes everyone feel like they won? He ran his hands through his hair. Politics and posturing. This is the part of the business I hate. The endless negotiation, the careful balance of power and respect. You'll figure it out. You always do. How do you know that? He turned to face me. How can you have that kind of faith in me? Because I've watched you for the past month. You're strategic, careful. You think 3 moves ahead. And underneath all the danger and power, you're still the man who wanted to take me to an expensive restaurant just to make me smile. That man doesn't want war. So he'll find another way. His expression softened. Come here. I went, letting him pull me close, his face buried in my neck, breathing me in like I was oxygen. You make me want to be better, to find solutions that don't involve violence. It's inconvenient. I smiled against his shoulder. Sorry for inconveniencing you with basic human decency. Don't be sorry, just stay. Keep reminding me that there's more to life than power and territory. Keep being the part of my world that's still good. We swayed there in the Miami hotel suite, No music but the rhythm of our breathing. Eventually, he pulled back, his hands framing my face. "I'm in love with you." The confession was quiet, almost reluctant. "I know it's too soon. I know we're still figuring this out. But I nearly lost you once, and I won't make the mistake of not saying it while I have the chance." "I love you, Sophia." My heart clenched. No one had said those words to me in longer than I could remember. Certainly not with the raw honesty Marco offered them. "I love you too. God help me. But I do." He kissed me then. And this time, when we moved toward the bedroom, neither of us pretended we were headed for separate rooms. This time, we chose each other completely. Let 5 years of grief and longing and second chances pour into something physical and real and achingly tender. Afterwards, wrapped in expensive sheets with the ocean breeze drifting through open windows, Marco traced the scar on my back with gentle fingers. "Does it still hurt?" "Not right now." I turned to face him. "Right now, everything feels perfect." His smile was soft, unguarded in a way I rarely saw. "Stay with me. Not just tonight. Move in. Make my space our space." "Marco, that's—" I started to protest. Too fast? Probably. But we already lost 5 years. I don't want to waste another day pretending we're not building something real here. His hand covered my heart. "I feel you here. In a way I've never felt anyone. Stay." The practical part of my brain cataloged all the reasons this was insane. The power imbalance, the criminal enterprise he ran, the danger that followed him, the fact that I'd only been back in his life for 2 months. But the part of me that had survived fire and loss and rebuilding from nothing, that part whispered that safety was an illusion, that living meant risking, that love was worth whatever danger came with it. "Okay, I'll stay." We returned from Miami with an unspoken understanding that everything had shifted. I moved my few possessions into Marco's penthouse, resigned my cheap apartment without regret, began building a life that intertwined with his so completely that separation seemed impossible. Work continued. I managed his schedule, attended meetings, documented things that would horrify my former law-abiding self. But I also understood now what Marco had meant about efficiency. His world operated by different rules, but those rules had their own logic. Protection for small businesses who couldn't afford traditional security. Justice for people failed by the legal system. Power used to create order in spaces where law enforcement feared to tread. It wasn't legal. It wasn't always moral. But it wasn't senseless evil either. It was complicated. Gray human. 3 months into living together, Marco came home early from a meeting. I was in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner. Something I'd never been good at, but was slowly learning. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. "Marry me." I nearly dropped the knife I was holding. "What?" "Marry me." He turned me in his arms. "I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out. But I want." He paused, struggling with words. "I want the legal claim, the public declaration. I want everyone to know you're mine, and I'm yours. Marry me, Sophia." My heart hammered. That's the most unromantic proposal I've ever heard. Would you prefer I get down on one knee and make a speech? Yes, actually. I smiled through the tears gathering in my eyes. I'd prefer that. He dropped to one knee right there in the kitchen, still in his expensive suit, looking absurdly perfect against the marble tile. Sophia Chen, Olivia Harper, whatever name you claim as your own. You survived fire. You rebuilt yourself. You walked back into my life and gave me a reason to be more than the man my father wanted me to become. You see the good in me when I can barely find it myself. You make me want to build something clean and legitimate and lasting. I'm nowhere close to deserving you, but I'm selfish enough to ask anyway. Marry me. Build a life with me. Give me the family I never had. The partnership I never thought I'd find. Say yes. How could I say anything else? Yes. I pulled him up and kissed him. Yes to all of it. The ring he produced was stunning. A single diamond surrounded by smaller stones, elegant and timeless. It fit perfectly, as if he'd somehow known my size without asking. Later, I'd learn he'd stolen one of my rings weeks ago, had it sized, planned this moment with the same strategic precision he applied to everything. We were married 3 weeks later, a small ceremony in the same hotel where we'd first met, where I'd died and been reborn, where our story had ended and begun again. His sister was there, a few trusted members of his inner circle, my mentor from nursing school, a handful of people who knew us both and understood the strange beauty of what we'd found. I wore emerald green, an echo of the dress from that first night. He wore black, sharp and dangerous, and mine. When he lifted my veil and kissed me, I tasted salt and realized we were both crying. For the years we'd lost, for the miracle of being found, for the future we were choosing despite every logical reason to walk away. That night, in the honeymoon suite that Marco had insisted on despite already living together, he traced my scar with worshipful fingers. "This is my favorite part of you." I laughed softly. "The ugliest part?" "Number. The strongest part. Proof that you survived, that you're here, that we get this second chance." His lips followed the path of the scar, gentle kisses on damaged skin. "Every time I see it, I remember that you're a fighter, that you don't give up, that you're mine. And you're mine." I pulled him up to face me, my dangerous, complicated, beautiful man. Mine. Always. The promise was absolute. Whatever comes, whoever threatens, whatever dangers we face, I'm yours until fire takes one of us for real this time. Then we better not waste a single moment. We didn't. The months that followed were the happiest of my life. Yes, there were complications. Investigations into Marco's business, threats from rival families, moments of genuine danger where security had to be heightened and movements restricted. But through it all, we had each other. A partnership built on survival and second chances, and the strange grace of being given back something precious you'd thought was lost forever. A year after our wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. The news terrified and thrilled in equal measure. Bringing a child into Marco's world seemed impossibly dangerous, but he held me and promised that he'd build something better, something cleaner, that he'd transition the family business toward legitimacy, that our child would inherit power, but not violence, empire, but not blood money. I believed him, because I'd watched him change over the past year, watched him negotiate instead of threaten, build instead of destroy, use his power to create rather than control. He was becoming the man he'd wanted to be before fire and grief had derailed him. And I was becoming someone stronger than Sophia or Olivia alone. I was both and neither. A woman forged in fire and tempered by love. On our daughter's first birthday, we returned to the club where I'd asked a dangerous stranger to dance. Marco had bought it months before, converted it into a legitimate business venture, a restaurant and event space. On this particular night, it was closed to the public, just us and our closest people. A celebration of life and survival and the family we'd built from ash. As we danced, our daughter sleeping peacefully in her grandmother's arms nearby, Marco whispered against my ear, "Thank you." For what? For asking me to dance, for being alive, for choosing me despite every reason not to, for giving me everything I didn't know I needed. I smiled up at him. "Thank you for being exactly where I needed you to be, for seeing me, for loving Sophia and Olivia both, for building this with me. The music swelled around us, and in that moment, everything felt complete. The pain of the past transformed into the foundation of the present. The scars we carried, proof not of damage, but of survival. Of the strange and beautiful truth that sometimes the most dangerous choices lead to the most extraordinary lives. "Could you dance with me?" I whispered, echoing that first night. "My ex is watching from the bar." Marco laughed, the sound rich and warm and utterly content. "There's no ex-husband, no past lives, just this. US forever. Just this." I agreed, resting my head against his chest. US forever. And we danced, two people who'd been given the rarest gift of all, a second chance at first love, a future built from the ashes of who we'd been. A story that had started with fire and ended with the warmth of chosen family. It wasn't the life either of us had planned, but it was ours, completely, perfectly, dangerously ours.